He swung his legs over the bed, feet hitting the cold hardwood, and that was when it hit him again. The date on his phone screen, November 6th, glowing like a curse. The same day? The day he had buried Rowan Beckett in his mind 2 years ago. The day the truck had swerved on slick I-5 asphalt and stolen everything. Except it had not. Not really. Because here it was, looping back like a glitch in the universe. And Elias knew, deep in his bones, that today would end the same way, with sirens, shattered glass, and a void that swallowed him whole. Downstairs in the coffee shop on the corner, steam rose from the espresso machine like ghosts from a forgotten dream. Elias ordered his usual black coffee, the barista a blur of tattoos and forced smiles, and stepped out into the downpour without an umbrella. Water soaked through his jacket in seconds, chilling him to the marrow. He walked the familiar route toward the Pike Place Market, where the fishmongers would hawk their catch and tourists snapped photos of the original Starbucks, oblivious to the man unraveling among them. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from his sister in Portland. "Happy birthday, Eli. Miss you. Call me later." He ignored it, as he always did on this day, because birthdays meant milestones, and milestones meant remembering Rowan laughing over cheap beer in their old Belltown loft, his green eyes crinkling at the corners like summer leaves. They had been 25 then, tangled in sheets and promises, until Elias ruined it all with a stupid mistake, a night of weakness that shattered the trust between them. The fight that followed had been brutal, words like knives, and Rowan had stormed out, only to crash into eternity on that rain-slicked highway. Elias cut through an alley, shortcuts he knew by heart, and there it was, the crosswalk at First and Pike, where the light turned red just as Rowan's truck had barreled through. He froze, heart slamming against his ribs, willing himself to move differently this time. Last loop, he had jaywalked to avoid it, but the cycle reset anyway. The time before, he had waited, frozen, and watched the accident unfold in slow motion from across the street. Nothing changed the script. Horns blared as traffic surged. A delivery van idled at the curb, its driver scrolling his phone. Elias stepped forward, against his better judgment, and that was when he saw him. Rowan Beckett, alive, striding across the street from the opposite side, umbrella tucked under one arm, collar turned up against the rain. Tall, broad-shouldered, with that same mop of auburn hair curling at the ends, damp and defiant. He looked exactly as he had that morning 2 years ago, down to the scuffed leather boots and the faint scar above his left eyebrow from a bar fight in college. Elias stumbled back, breath catching. Rowan. The name escaped like a prayer, barely audible over the rain. Rowan paused mid-stride, turning his head, those green eyes locking onto Elias with a flicker of recognition that should not have been there. Not in this nightmare replay. Eli. Rowan's voice cut through the storm, rough and warm, laced with confusion. He closed the distance in 3 long steps, umbrella forgotten, water streaming down his face. "What the hell are you doing here?" I thought. The light changed. Traffic roared. But Rowan did not glance at the van. He grabbed Elias' arm, pulling him back to the sidewalk just as the vehicle splashed past, inches from where Elias had stood. "You almost got yourself killed, man." Again. Again. The word hung between them, heavy as the fog rolling in from the sound. Elias searched Rowan's face, the faint lines around his mouth that spoke of laughs and losses, the way his jaw tightened just so. This was not a hallucination. Rowan remembered. They ducked into a doorway under the awning of a shuttered bookstore, shoulders brushing in the tight space. Rain drummed on the metal overhang, a curtain sealing them off from the world. "How?" Elias whispered, voice cracking. "You died. That truck. It hit you. I saw it. Held your hand in the hospital until..." Rowan leaned in, close enough that Elias could smell the faint cedar of his cologne mixed with wet wool. "I know. Every damn loop. I feel it coming. The screech of tires, the impact. But then I wake up here, in this body, on this day. And you're always there, Eli, like a ghost I can't shake, trying to save me, or yourself, or both." Elias' grip tightened on Rowan's sleeve, fabric bunching under his fingers. Memories flooded back, the way Rowan's laugh had filled their apartment, low and rumbling like distant thunder, the quiet nights when they lay tangled, whispering dreams of a life beyond Seattle's gray veil, the betrayal that had poisoned it all, when Elias, drunk and lonely on a work trip to Portland, had let a stranger kiss him in a bar, photos sent anonymously to Rowan the next day. The end had come swift, Rowan packing his bags with eyes like shattered emeralds, driving off into the rain without a backward glance. I never got to say it, Elias choked out. I'm sorry. For everything. For that night. For not fighting harder. For letting you go. Rowan's eyes softened, but there was steel beneath. Apologies don't fix time loops, Eli. We've been here 50 times, maybe more. You think I don't remember every version? The one where you confess at dawn, and we kiss like it's the first time? Or the one where you walk away, and I chase you through the market, begging? But it always ends the same. The crash. The reset. 50 times. The weight of it pressed down, heavier than the rain. Elias leaned his forehead against the brick wall, cool and unyielding. Then why? Why us? What the hell is this punishment for? Rowan reached out, thumb brushing Elias' cheek, wiping away a tear lost in the drizzle. Maybe it's not punishment. Maybe it's a chance to get it right. The morning unfolded in fractured pieces after that, a mosaic of what was and what could be. They wandered the market together, shoulders bumping as they navigated the crowds. Vendors tossed salmon through the air with practiced flair, the slap of fish on scales a rhythmic counterpoint to their halting conversation. Rowan bought a bouquet of wilting dahlias from a flower stall, the petals bruised purple and red, and handed them to Elias with a half-smile. For the guy who's always waiting at the crosswalk. Figured it was time. Elias clutched the flowers, stems digging into his palm, a sting of reality in the surreal. They sat on a bench overlooking the sound, ferries cutting white wakes through the gray water, gulls wheeling overhead. Rowan talked, voice steady, about the loops he had endured alone at first, waking in his old apartment across town, the one he had kept after the breakup, staring at the ceiling fan that still bore the dent from their last fight. How he had tested the boundaries, jumping off the ferry once, only to wash up on the same shore at dawn, coughing salt water. How he had sought out Elias each time, drawn like a moth to the flame of unfinished business. I hated you at first, Rowan admitted, gaze fixed on the horizon. For what you did. That photo. It gutted me. Made me question everything. But in these loops, seeing you try, over and over, it chips away at the anger. Makes me wonder if we were ever really done. Elias' throat tightened. The dahlias trembled in his lap. We weren't. I was scared, Ro. Scared of how much I needed you. How it felt like drowning in the best way. That night in Portland, it was nothing. A stupid grab for control when I thought you were pulling away. But I lost you anyway. The lunch hour brought them to a dim taqueria off the main drag, where the air smelled of cumin and sizzling carne asada. They shared plates of tacos, fingers brushing over the chipped ceramic, sparks jumping despite the chill seeping through the windows. Conversation turned lighter, laced with nostalgia. The road trip to Olympic National Park where they had hiked to Sol Duc Falls, hands clasped over mossy roots. The winter when they strung fairy lights in the loft and danced to vinyl records. Rowan's arms a safe harbor against the world's storms. But shadows lingered. As the afternoon wore on, they walked the waterfront, the Olympic mountains faint smudges in the mist. Elias felt the pull of the cycle, the invisible tether yanking them toward evening. What if we don't go near the highway? He asked, desperation creeping in. We stay here, hole up in a hotel, pretend the day's over. Rowan stopped, turning to face him, hands cupping Elias' face with a gentleness that broke something inside. We tried that. 10th loop, maybe. Rented a room at the Edgewater, ordered room service, made love like it was our last night. But midnight comes, and the dream pulls me back. The truck finds its way. Elias closed his eyes, leaning into the touch. Rowan's palms were rough from years as a carpenter, calluses mapping stories of built things and broken ones. Then tell me what to do, how to end it. Rowan's breath was warm against his temple. Forgive yourself, Eli. That's the key. Not me. You. Because every loop, you're the one carrying the guilt like a chain. Dusk fell early, as it did in Seattle winters, the sky bruising purple over the sound. They climbed the stairs to Elias' apartment, steps heavy with unspoken fears. The door creaked open to the familiar mess, takeout boxes on the counter, a half-read copy of The Night Circus on the couch, the ghost of Rowan's flannel still hanging in the closet from the days he crashed their post-fight. They moved like they had in the loops before, shedding wet clothes in the hallway, skin meeting skin in the dim light filtering through rain-streaked windows. It was urgent, tender, a reclaiming. Elias traced the scar on Rowan's shoulder, a remnant of childhood tree-climbing gone wrong, whispering apologies into the hollow of his throat. Rowan responded with kisses that tasted of salt and second chances, hands mapping paths they had forgotten. But as the clock ticked toward 10, the air thickened. Elias felt it first, a vertigo spin in his gut. No, he murmured, clinging tighter. Not yet. Rowan held him, fierce and unyielding. They'll find you again. Tomorrow. Or the next loop. We keep going until it breaks. The world dissolved in a rush of black, sirens wailing in the distance. Elias jolted awake at 6:47 a.m., alarm blaring, rain lashing the window. The same day? But this time, as he stumbled to the coffee shop, dahlia petals clung to his pillow like a promise. And when he reached the crosswalk, Rowan was there, waiting, green eyes steady. Ready to try again? The second loop began with a deliberate slowness, Elias forcing himself to breathe through the panic that clawed at his chest. He skipped the coffee, heading straight for the market, where the air hummed with the chatter of vendors and the slap of wet fish against ice. Rowan was already there, leaning against a pillar near the clock tower, a paper cup steaming in his hands. He spotted Elias immediately, a slow smile breaking across his face like sunlight piercing clouds. "Morning, stranger," Rowan said, handing over the cup. "Black coffee, 2 sugars, just how Elias liked it. Figured we'd cut the drama today. No near misses at crosswalks." Elias took the cup, fingers lingering on Rowan's, the warmth seeping into his skin. "How many times have we done this exact opener? Lost count after 20. But it never gets old." Rowan's voice was light, but his eyes held depths, pools of green flecked with gold, reflecting the turmoil beneath. They spent the morning wandering the stalls, a rhythm emerging like an old dance rediscovered. Rowan haggled over a jar of wildflower honey, his laugh booming when the seller threw in a free beeswax candle. Elias watched him, mesmerized by the ease of his movements, the way his broad hands gestured animatedly, veins standing out like rivers on a map. It was these small things he had mourned most in the years after. The casual grace, the way Rowan made the world feel less gray. By noon, they were at a park overlooking Lake Union, houseboats bobbing on the choppy water, distant jets carving silver trails across the sky. They spread a blanket stolen from Elias' apartment, picnicking on cheese and crackers pilfered from the market. Conversation meandered, skirting the edges of their shared history. "Remember that storm in July?" Elias asked, popping a grape into his mouth. "The one where we got caught on the ferry to Bainbridge, lights flickering like some apocalypse movie." Rowan chuckled, leaning back on his elbows, auburn hair catching the rare glint of sun. "Yeah, you freaked. Thought we were going down. I held you the whole way, whispering dumb jokes about Poseidon being pissed at our PDA." Elias' smile faded, the memory twisting into something sharper. "That was before Portland. Before I fucked it all up." Rowan sat up, expression sobering. "We don't have to go there yet, Eli. Not every loop needs to be therapy hour." But Elias could not stop it, the words tumbling out like rain from a gutter. "I keep replaying it. The bar in Portland, that guy with the easy smile and no strings. I was mad at you for canceling our weekend, thought you were drifting. So I drank too much, let it happen. Woke up hating myself, but the damage was done when those photos hit your phone." Rowan gaze dropped to the blanket, fingers tracing the weave. "I got them at work. Mid-cut on a cherry beam for that custom mantle. Nearly dropped the saw on my foot. Felt like the floor caved in, Eli. Like everything we'd built was sawdust." Silence stretched, broken only by a kayaker call from the lake. Elias reached out, hand hovering before settling on Rowan's knee. "In the loops, do you forgive me? Even a little?" Rowan's eyes met his, raw and unguarded. "Some days, yes. Others, it stings fresh. But seeing you here, fighting the cycle, it makes me want to. Makes me remember why I fell for you in the first place. That fire, the way you'd argue poetry with me at 3 a.m., or drag me to midnight screenings of old noirs." They packed up as clouds gathered again, the sun surrendering to Seattle's default gloom. Afternoon took them to the Seattle Art Museum, where they lost hours in the modern wing. Elias lingered before a Rothko, the canvas vast fields of color bleeding into black, evoking the void of each reset. Rowan stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder, their pinkies brushing in silent solidarity. "You ever think this is purgatory?" Elias murmured. "Us, stuck reliving the worst day, hashing out sins like some cosmic confessional." Rowan tilted his head, studying the painting. "Nah, purgatory's lonely. This is us, Eli. Messy, looping, but together." They emerged into evening drizzle, neon signs flickering to life along First Avenue. Dinner was at a hole-in-the-wall faux shop, bowls steaming with basil and lime, the broth a balm against the chill. Over second helpings, Rowan shared fragments of his solo loops. The time he had driven to the coast, parked at La Push, screaming into the waves until his voice gave out. The night he had broken into their old loft, now rented to strangers, lying on the floor where they had once made love, tracing ghosts on the hardwood. "I kept your flannel," he confessed, slurping noodles. "The blue one, with the tear in the sleeve from that hike. Smells like you still. Pine and regret." Elias' heart ached, a sweet pain. "Wear it tomorrow. In the next loop." Rowan nodded, eyes gleaming. "Deal." Night deepened as they walked back to Elias' place, the city alive with bar hoppers and street musicians strumming covers of Fleetwood Mac. Inside, the apartment felt less like a cage, more like a sanctuary. They cooked pasta from a box, sauce splattering the stove, laughing over burned garlic bread. Wine followed, cheap red from the corner store, glasses clinking in toasts to whatever comes next. Curled on the couch, a forgotten documentary droning about climate change, Elias' head rested on Rowan's chest, listening to the steady thump of his heart. "What if we sleep through it?" he whispered. "Miss the reset." Rowan's fingers carded through his hair. "Worth a shot." But sleep brought dreams within dreams, flashes of the crash, metal twisting, Rowan's hand slipping from his. Elias woke sweating at 2 a.m., Rowan beside him, breath even. He watched him in the moonlight, memorizing the curve of his lashes, the faint freckles across his nose. Dawn crept in too soon, the alarm a traitor at 6:47. Elias bolted up, disoriented, the sheets cold and empty. Rain again, the crack in the ceiling. But as he dressed, he found it. The blue flannel, folded on the chair, carrying the faint scent of cedar and home. He slipped it on, fabric enveloping him like arms. At the crosswalk, Rowan waited, green eyes lighting up. "Looks good on you. Ready for round 3? Elias grinned, the weight lighter. "Hell yeah." The loops blurred after that, days stacking like wet pages in a novel no one else could read. In one, they drove to the peninsula, windows down, wind whipping through as indie rock blasted from the speakers. They hiked the Ho Rain forest, ferns brushing their legs, the air thick with moss and possibility. At a secluded beach, they built a fire from driftwood, sparks dancing into the twilight, bodies entwining under a shared blanket as waves whispered forgiveness. Another loop saw them at a dive bar in Fremont, pool cues in hand, betting shots on 8-ball. Rowan won, as always, his victory kiss tasting of whiskey and triumph. They danced to a jukebox playing Springsteen, hips swaying in the dim light, strangers' glances sliding off them like rain. Yet beneath the stolen joys, tension simmered. Elias sensed it in Rowan's silences, the way his gaze would drift during quiet moments, shadows crossing his features. One afternoon, in a loop spent at the Arboretum, cherry blossoms shedding pink petals like confetti, it boiled over. They sat on a bench by the Japanese garden, koi gliding beneath the surface like orange specters. "You're holding back," Elias said, voice low. "I feel it. Like you're waiting for me to screw up again." Rowan sighed, tossing a pebble into the pond, ripples spreading. "It's not that. It's, what if we break the loop? What then? Back to real time, where I did die? Or worse, where we never fixed us?" Elias recoiled, the words a slap. "So you'd rather stay trapped? Relive the crash over and over because it's easier than facing what I did." Rowan's eyes flashed. "Easier? You think this is easy, Eli? Dying every night. Waking to your face full of pity? I loved you enough to try, 50 times over. But yeah, part of me wonders if the universe is trying to tell us something. That we were toxic, that my leaving was the mercy." The argument escalated, voices rising, drawing stares from joggers. Elias stood, chest heaving. "Mercy? You call that crash mercy? I carried your ghost for 2 years, Ro. Therapy, meds, the whole Seattle special. And now, when we have this, you're bailing again?" Rowan rose too, towering but not menacing, hurt etching his features. "I'm not bailing. I'm scared. Of you breaking my heart for real this time." They parted in the parking lot, Elias storming to his car, tires screeching as he peeled out. The drive home was a blur of tears and wipers, rain mirroring the storm inside. He slammed the apartment door, pacing, the flannel discarded like shed skin. Midnight came, the vertigo hit, and reset swallowed him. But in the next loop, as he approached the crosswalk, Rowan was not there. Panic surged. Elias scanned the crowd, heart pounding. Minutes ticked by, the lights cycling red to green. Then, a hand on his shoulder. Rowan, breathless, hair disheveled. "Sorry. Took the long way. Couldn't let you think I ran." Relief flooded Elias, pulling him into a fierce hug, bodies colliding amid the pedestrian flow. "Don't ever," he murmured into Rowan's neck. "We're in this together." From there, the loops shifted, vulnerability cracking open new paths. They talked for hours over midnight runs to diners, fluorescent lights buzzing as they dissected the betrayal. Elias owning the selfishness, the fear of vulnerability that had driven him to that bar. Rowan admitting his own walls, the way his carpentry perfectionism bled into their relationship, demanding flawlessness until it snapped. In one cycle, they visited Rowan's workshop in Ballard, sawdust coating the air like gold dust. He guided Elias' hands over lathe and plane, teaching him to shape oak into something beautiful. "See," Rowan said, their fingers intertwined on the wood. "It's not about perfection. It's about the grain, the knots, the story and the flaws." Elias nodded, pressing a kiss to Rowan's temple, tasting salt and promise. "Like us." As loops layered, intimacy deepened, not just in bodies but souls. They wrote letters in the margins of newspapers, sealing them with wax from market candles, promises to carry forward if the cycle broke. Elias found forgiveness in Rowan's gaze, a quiet absolution that mended fractures he had thought permanent. Yet the evenings always loomed, the specter of 10 o'clock drawing near. One night, in a loop of quiet domesticity, cooking stir-fry in the apartment, Rowan paused mid-chop, knife hovering. What if the key is letting go? Not fighting the end, but choosing each other anyway. Elias set down his spoon, crossing to him. "Then we choose. Every time." They made love then, slow and deliberate, as if etching the moment into eternity. Dawn came, reset followed, but Elias woke with Rowan's scent on the sheets, a talisman against despair. At the crosswalk, Rowan grinned. Loop 62, or the one that counts. By the 70th loop, or thereabouts, Elias had stopped counting to avoid the madness. The days began to fracture at the edges, reality bleeding through like ink on wet paper. Mornings brought anomalies. A barista remembering his order from a previous cycle, or a headline in the stranger newspaper about a ferry delay that matched a storm they had weathered 3 loops back. Seattle, that moody mistress, seemed to wink at their secret, the city's veins pulsing with their shared delirium. They leaned into it, turning the loops into a game of reclamation. One day, they chartered a float plane to the San Juans, the propeller chopping air as they lifted over the sound, islands unfolding below like emeralds in gray silk. Landing on a private dock, they hiked to a lighthouse, wind whipping their jackets, Rowan's arm around Elias' waist steadying him against gusts. At the top, overlooking the strait, they shouted confessions into the gale, fears of inadequacy, dreams deferred, the quiet terror of loving so fiercely it might consume them. "I wanted to build us a house," Rowan yelled over the howl. "On the peninsula, with a workshop and a view. But after Portland, it felt like building on sand." Elias gripped the railing, tears stinging. "Build it now. In the next loop. We'll start the plans." Rowan pulled him close, mouths crashing in a kiss that tasted of salt wind and wild hope. "Deal." Back in the city, the anomalies multiplied. A street musician played Wagon Wheel, the same cover from their college days at UW, pausing to nod at them as if in on the joke. Elias' sister called, her voice echoing a conversation from Loop 47, asking about a birthday dinner that had not happened yet. It unnerved them, this creeping awareness, but also ignited a spark. Perhaps the universe was tiring of their dance, ready to release. Conflict brewed, inevitable as the tide. In Loop 80, they argued over breakfast at a cafe in Queen, and croissants crumbling under tense fingers. It started small, Elias suggesting they avoid the highway entirely, holing up in a cabin east of the mountains, but escalated when Rowan pushed back. "You're still running," Rowan said, voice edged with frustration. "Same as Portland, dodging the hard parts, thinking if we just hide, it'll fix itself." Elias recoiled, coffee turning bitter on his tongue. "And you're the one who died, Ro. Every night. You tell me how to face that without running." Rowan's chair scraped back. "By staying. By trusting that whatever comes after, we face it together. Not this endless deferral." He stormed out, leaving Elias with the bill and a hollow ache. The day dragged, Elias wandering the waterfront alone, gulls mocking him with their freedom. He texted Rowan a dozen times, apologies blurring into pleas, but silence answered. Dusk fell, and panic clawed. What if the loop reset without reconciliation? What if Rowan, in his hurt, chose not to meet at the crosswalk? Midnight vertigo hit, but this time it lingered, a nausea that twisted longer than usual. Elias woke, gasping, the apartment unchanged, rain unrelenting. He dressed in haste, flannel on, and raced to the market. The crosswalk loomed, light red, traffic snarling. No Rowan. Minutes stretched to agony. Elias paced, ignoring stares, the van idling like a predator. Then, from the alley, Rowan, jogging, face flushed. I was coming. Just needed air. They collided in relief, embrace fierce amid the flow. Don't do that again, Elias whispered. The world's small enough without you vanishing. Rowan nodded, holding tight. Lesson learned. The makeup loop was tinder, a bomb. They volunteered at a food bank in the Central District, sorting cans and chatting with families, hands brushing over labels. In the warehouse hush, Rowan leaned in. This is what I missed. Us, doing good, not just surviving. Elias smiled, stacking boxes. More of this, then. Afternoons turned exploratory. Visits to the Wing Luke Museum, where exhibits on Asian American stories mirrored their own hidden narratives. Kayaking on Green Lake, paddles dipping in unison, laughter echoing off willows. Evenings were for creation, Rowan sketching house plans on napkins, Elias annotating with flourishes, a porch swing here, a library nook there. But the betrayal's shadow lingered, not just Elias, but mutual. In Loop 95, over wine on the apartment balcony, Rowan confessed his own fracture. A flirtation with a co-worker post-breakup, a coffee that turned to dinner, guilt halting it before lines crossed. I get it now, Rowan said, swirling his glass. The pull of something easy when the heart hurts. Doesn't make it right, but it humanizes the mess. Elias squeezed his hand. We're both naughty wood, huh? But stronger for it. Intimacy evolved, layers peeling like onion skins. They explored boundaries, vulnerabilities, Elias opening about his father's disapproval, the cold silences in their Tacoma suburb that taught him love was conditional. Rowan sharing the ache of his mother's passing during his teens, how carpentry became his anchor, building to fill voids. One loop, they drove to Mount Rainier, chains on tires for the slick roads, emerging at paradise to snow-dusted meadows. They made snow angels, flakes catching in lashes, then retreated to the car for warmth, bodies generating heat in the back seat, fogged windows hiding their world. As cycles deepened, Elias noticed Rowan's weariness, faint shadows under his eyes, a hesitation in his step. You're fading, Elias said one dawn, tracing Rowan's jaw. Like the loops are draining you. Rowan captured his hand, kissing the knuckles. Or filling me. Depends on the angle. Yet doubt crept. In a stormy loop, thunder rumbling like disapproval, they sheltered in a gazebo at Gasworks Park, rusted silos looming like sentinels. What if breaking it means losing you? Elias voiced the fear aloud. Back to my life without ghosts, but empty. Rowan pulled him onto his lap, arms a fortress. Then we haunt each other in the real world. Find our way back. The anomalies peaked in Loop 105. A child at the market handing Elias a drawing of two men holding hands under rain, crayon lines bold. A radio in a passing car playing their song, Ho Hey, by the Lumineers, volume cranked as if broadcast just for them. It's close, Rowan murmured that night, as they lay spent in tangled sheets. The end's coming. I feel it in my bones. Elias nodded, fear and excitement twining. Whatever it is, we face it. Dawn broke clearer than usual, clouds parting to blue. At the crosswalk, Rowan waited, but his form shimmered, edges blurring like heat haze. This is it, Eli. The last one. Panic surged. No, we need more time. Rowan smiled, sad and sure. We had enough. Forgive. Choose. Live. The light changed. Traffic surged. But this time, as the van approached, Rowan stepped forward, not pulling Elias back, but linking hands. Together, they crossed, the world holding breath. The 106th loop, or was it the finale, dawned with a deceptive calm, the rain reduced to a fine mist that beaded on window panes like reluctant tears. Elias lay still, Rowan's flannel draped over him, the fabric a talisman worn thin from endless wearings. He dressed slowly, each button a meditation, and stepped into the street with the weight of all prior days pressing on his shoulders. The city felt alive in new ways, leaves rustling with purpose, distant horns harmonizing rather than clashing. At the market, Rowan leaned against the clock tower, but his posture held a quiet resolve, green eyes scanning not with expectation, but finality. He pushed off the pillar, closing the gap, and for the first time, did not offer coffee or quips. Instead, he cupped Elias' face, thumbs stroking cheekbones. Today feels different. Solid. Elias nodded, throat tight. Like the air's thicker, realer. They walked without plan, letting the city guide them. Past the gum wall, sticky with decades of wishes, where Elias pressed his lips to a fresh spot, murmuring, "Stay." Rowan watched, then added his own, a silent vow. Mid-morning found them at the library, the central branch's glass pyramid refracting light into rainbows on marble floors. They browsed stacks, fingers trailing spines, Kerouac for wanderlust, Baldwin for truths on love and identity. In a quiet alcove, Rowan pulled a slim volume of Whitman, reading aloud. "I am he that walks with the tender and growing night. I sing the body electric." Elias leaned into him, voice hushed. "Our song, in verse." Luncheon was impromptu. A food truck serving banh mi near the sculpture garden, baguettes crisp, pâté rich. They ate on the grass, knees touching, feeding each other bites amid laughter that felt unscripted, free. But undercurrents stirred. As afternoon waned, they climbed to Cary Park, the skyline sprawling below. Space needle-piercing clouds, fairies dotting the sound like punctuation. The view, iconic and intimate, had been their spot in early days, picnics and stargazing. Now, it hummed with portent. Rowan sat on the low wall, legs dangling, wind tousling his auburn curls. "Remember our first time here? You brought that crappy telescope, swore you saw Mars." Elias chuckled, settling beside him. "And you pretended to, just to make me happy." Silence fell, companionable yet charged. Rowan turned, expression grave. "Eli, whatever happens tonight, know this, the loops weren't punishment. They were grace. A mirror to see us clear, what we broke, what we can mend." Elias' heart stuttered. "You're talking like goodbyes." "Not goodbye. Evolution." Rowan's hand found his, interlacing fingers. "But if this breaks, promise you'll live messy. Love fierce. No more hiding." Tears pricked Elias' eyes. "Only if you do the same." Dusk painted the sky in hues of lavender and rose, rare for Seattle, as if the heavens conspire to send off. They descended to a jazz club in Belltown, the Blue Moon, where saxophones wailed low and sultry. Sipping old fashions, they swayed on the dance floor, bodies sinking to bass lines that thrummed like heartbeats. Rowan's breath was hot on Elias' neck, whispers of "I see you" and "I choose you" weaving through the melody. Later, walking arm in arm through neon-lit streets, they passed their old loft, windows glowing with new tenants' lives. Pausing, Elias pressed palm to glass, feeling echoes. "We were happy here. Before." Rowan joined him, forehead to the pane. "We can be again. Somewhere new." The apartment waited, no longer a prison but a threshold. They cooked simply, salmon from the market, asparagus charred just right, wine flowing easy. Conversation turned confessional, depths unplumbed even in loops. Elias admitting therapy had unearthed his father's homophobia as a scar, fueling self-sabotage. Rowan revealing how his mother's death left him terrified of abandonment, pushing Elias away preemptively post-betrayal. "Fear made monsters of us," Elias said. Fork paused. Rowan nodded, eyes soft. "But love slays them." They cleared plates, moving to the couch, where a record player spun Coltrane, notes curling like smoke. Elias straddled Rowan's lap, kisses deepening, hands exploring with reverence. It was not frenzy, but communion, touches mapping scars, breaths sinking in rhythm. In the quiet after, limbs entwined, Elias traced Rowan's ribs. "If this ends, how do I find you?" "In the after?" Rowan's fingers stilled. "You already have. The man's you lost. He's been here, in every loop. And he'll be waiting when the world's right again." Clock ticked toward 10. No vertigo yet, but tension coiled. They dressed, wordless, and stepped into the night. Rain held at bay. The highway called. I-5 a dark ribbon north, but they veered east instead, toward the floating bridge over the lake, lights reflecting like stars fallen to water. At the midpoint, they pulled over, standing at the guardrail, city lights sprawling. "This is where it changes," Rowan said, voice steady. "Cross with me. Not against the cycle, but through it." Elias gripped his hand, pulse racing. Together, they walked the bridge, cars whooshing past, wind whipping. Midway, a rumble, not thunder, but something deeper, a vibration in the air. The world tilted, colors bleeding, but Rowan's grip held firm. "Look," he urged. Ahead, the horizon shimmered, not fog, but a veil parting. Beyond, not Seattle, but a dawn-lit road, clear-skied, leading to unknown horizons. Elias faltered. What if? Rowan turned him, eyes fierce. We leap. They ran then, hand in hand, toward the light. The vertigo hit, but reversed, not pulling back, but propelling forward. Sensations cascaded, the crash's echo fading, replaced by birdsong, sirens silenced by waves lapping a new shore. Elias woke not to alarm, but birdsong, sun slanting through unfamiliar curtains. A bed, wide and warm, sheets scented with cedar. Beside him, Rowan, breathing even, chest rising-falling. Panic flickered, then eased. He checked the date, November 7th. The day after. Rowan stirred, green eyes opening. No confusion, only a slow smile. Morning, Eli. You look like you've seen a ghost. Elias laughed, tears spilling, pulling him close. I have. The best kind. They rose to a world remade. The apartment larger, filled with half-built furniture, plans for that peninsula house tacked to the fridge. No 2 years lost. Somehow, the loops had folded time, mending the fracture before the crash could claim. Or perhaps it was metaphor, a dream that birthed reality. Days unfolded without repetition, each sunrise a gift. They argued over cabinet colors, made love in the workshop sawdust, hosted dinners where Elias' sister teased their glow. Betrayals past became stories, not chains. Lessons in vulnerability, anchors for deeper trust. One evening, on their porch swing, built by Rowan's hands, Elias' paint still fresh, they watched sunset gild the sound. Think it was real? Elias asked, head on Rowan's shoulder. Rowan kissed his temple, every loop, and this one most of all. In quiet moments, Elias felt the echoes, a shiver at crosswalks, a wistful glance at dahlias. But they were soft now, reminders of grace, not grief. He lived messy, loved fierce, identity unapologetic, a gay man in Seattle's embrace, loved wholly. And in the man beside him, he found home, not lost, but reclaimed. No, wait, the bridge run had been the pivot, but realities we've demanded more. Elias' first week post-loop was disorienting, a dream hangover. He called in sick to his graphic design job, claiming flu, and spent days mapping the new normal. Emails from clients referencing projects that aligned with Rowan's carpentry gigs, a joint bank account he did not recall opening. Time had not erased the 2 years, but rewritten them. A softer edit, where the breakup led to space, not tragedy, and reconciliation bloomed in therapy sessions and tentative coffees. Rowan, now a constant in his Capitol Hill walk-up, explained over morning eggs. The loops collapsed the gap. We fought, parted, but instead of the drive that night, I turned back. Called you from a gas station, voice shaking. We met at that diner on Aurora, talked till dawn. Elias traced the scar on Rowan's brow, unchanged. And the crash. A near miss. Skid on ice, but I pulled over. Woke next day sore but whole. Drove back to you. Gratitude swelled, but so did the old guilt's echo. They dove into it head-on, sessions with a counselor in Fremont, a no-nonsense woman with wire rims and a knack for cutting through bullshit. Forgiveness isn't erasure, she said one Tuesday, rain pattering the office window. It's integration. Carry the scar, but don't let it bleed. Elias integrated. Volunteered at the food bank weekly, channeling Loop's energy into service. Enrolled in a poetry workshop at Hugo House. Words flowing freer, verses about cycles and chosen paths. Rowan built, their future house progressing from napkin sketches to blueprints, a plot secured in Discovery Bay, views of the strait promising sunsets without strings. Yet conflict lingered, human as heartbeat. A month in, Elias' work trip to Portland loomed, the city a trigger. Go, Rowan urged over dinner, chopsticks pausing mid-bite. Prove to yourself it's just a place. Elias went, nerves jangling, but checked in nightly, photos of client meetings and rainy streets. No bars, no lapses, just focus, returning early with a carved whale for Rowan's shelf. Rowan, too, faltered. A late night at the workshop, flirty banter with a supplier turning awkward. He confessed over breakfast, voice small. Felt like testing. Stupid. Elias pulled him into a hug, coffee forgotten. We test together. No solos. Their bond deepened in layers. Weekend getaways to the Cascades, tents pitched under stars, stories swapped by firelight. pride parades where they marched hand in hand, rainbows clashing with Seattle's gray, quiet anniversaries marking not the crash, but the diner reconciliation, toasts with local IPA. Sex evolved too, from urgent reclaiming to exploratory joy, toys from a Capitol Hill shop, role-play drawing on loop memories, laughter mingling with gasps. Elias learned Rowan's sighs, the arch of his back under moonlight. Rowan mapped Elias' freckles, kisses like constellations. Community wove in, friends from loops that lingered, the barista now a regular at their brunches, Elias' sister visiting, eyeing Rowan with approval, her Portland tales a bridge to family. But the deepest thread was identity's quiet bloom. Elias came out fully at work, a casual mention in a team meeting sparking allies and one awkward HR email, resolved with pride flag on his desk. Rowan, long out, mentored a queer youth group, his workshop hosting build nights for trans kids, hammers swinging hope. 6 months post, the house foundation poured. They stood on the site, dirt under nails, future rising. This is it, Elias said, arms around Rowan's waist. No loops, just us. Rowan turned, kissing him slow. And that's the story worth living. Years folded gentle. The house completed, walls echoing with laughter, a dog named Whiskey bounding through halls, adoptions considered, dreams of family taking root. Elias' novel published, loops veiled as fiction, readers hailing its heart. Rowan's furniture line bloomed, pieces in galleries, each bearing their joint initial carved discreet. In quiet, they reflected, the man lost found not in time travel, but time given. Betrayal a chapter, not the book, love the arc bending toward light. And in Seattle's rain, they thrived, compassionate, free, true.